Hey folks, John Smale here, right again. Talking about just before I opened Smalespace, this is what I was doing. I worked in the display business, uh, and display business is visual merchandising. It's marketing. It's selling merchandise through good display, and it's well respected when it's done well. I started off my career at the Eaton Centre in London, Ontario, part of the now extinct chain. We never saw that one coming, that Eaton's would be gone someday. But it was a real going concern back in the late 60s and early 70s. And the job was all about creativity, and that's what I was wanting and longing for. I just didn't want to be uh, working at Eaton's in anything other than uh, the merchandising department. And it was all about creativity, and it was that department was headed up by a fellow by the name of Bill Neal, who I have tremendous respect for. Bill was very creative. He could draw anything, and he was also practical, and that's what I think creativity is. It's being practical and knowing how to get things done without spending a heck of a lot of money. And the staff that he gathered around him were all Dutch except for me. Maybe he thought I was Dutch. I don't know. But there was Hank and Teresa and Terry, and then there was the print shop where we printed off all the cards that went around the store that would say things like Mother's Day coming up, buy mom that wonderful new housecoat negligee or whatever. You know what I mean. And that was run by Bob and Ted, and I learned how to print things with not offset or anything like that. It was just where you set the letters and the numbers, the upper cases and the lower cases, etc. Now, I was in charge of mannequins. I was the junior on the team. And so I had to sort of maintain and do repairs to mannequins if they got bumped up or whatever. And you'd often see me walking through the store carrying a woman under my arms, and it got quite a few stares. And I don't think I ever did anything rude with those mannequins, but if anybody has any pictures that do exist, I'll pay handsomely for them. But all kidding aside, I really did enjoy the working at Eaton. So one of the things I enjoyed the most was getting on the bus and going from downtown uh, London on Wellington Street to South London, down to Commissioners Road, where Eaton's had a large warehouse. And as you can imagine, a display department has a lot of storage in it for seasonal props, because there are so many seasons in the retail industry. And along with those props, winter and Christmas was huge. And so they put me down there for the months of July and August to get the Christmas displays ready. And in that were all these robotronics and, Santa's elves. Hey, Santa! And they would wave and jiggle, and Santa would ho, 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 and the reindeer would prance along. And they all had these little robotronic motors in them and these mechanical legs and wrists and arms and smiles. And bobbing of the heads, and that was a real joy for me. I loved doing that. When I left Eaton's, I went freelance, which means I became self-employed. But I got to meet a lot of people downtown, and they liked the work I did, and I think they liked me. So I got hired to do windows at the Traveller, which was a famous luggage shop in London. A terrific bookstore, which the name fails me right now, but I'll think about it as soon as I push the stop button here. Trafford's jean shop, and he sold other things in the jean shop. It was a very hipster kind of a place. Dallard's ladies wear, Savoy shoes, anyway, I did a number of places, and the windows would change typically every 2 weeks to every month, or more at the seasons, etc. And quite frankly, the money was good. And what I had to do though, because I was a one-man show, is I had to rent a little garage close to downtown where I kept my tools and some minor storage, because I didn't have a lot of props, and I had to make them, and I had to be creative with what I did. And now, let me explain some of the things I did, because they were very temporal, and I call them art installations, and because it was temporary art that was set up, and meant to be torn down and basically thrown away, the props part of it anyway, certainly not the merchandise, because I was in the business of selling merchandise for my clients. And one of the windows that I especially loved was a summer series, and I went out to the country, and I picked a whole bunch of wheat, stalks of wheat, and I painfully stuck each stick of wheat into a styrofoam base, probably 4 feet by 8 feet, and I created a wheat field, which I had these women mannequins, all dressed in either Irish linen or camel, or those kind of tones, those wheat colored tones. And I had a fan up in the corner blowing the wheat, and I had golden lights making the whole window glow at night. And boy, oh boy, that was photographed, and people talked about it. Another one I did was put kids' swimming pools in the window, and rubber duckies in the water, and I had kids' boots dancing and off these invisible lines from the ceiling, and it was a boot promotion for kids. And as you walk by the store, you say, "Yeah, I better get little Jack and little Jill a pair of boots, because it's rainy season coming up," and things like that. Another one I did for a jewelry shop was I got an old stove, like a range, and had the oven door open, and out of the oven door were coming these cookie sheets and muffin tins, and full of costume jewelry that was freshly baked. And once again, it made people giggle, and it made them buy, and that was important. Another one I did was a series of kids' kites. Again, inexpensive things here, right? We're talking about buying a bunch of kites, and for the tails on them, I tied men's ties with beautiful Windsor knots on them, etc. And those were flying through the window again with fans, and throughout the store and out onto the street. And it caught a lot of people's attention, and was fun. And people talked about, "You got to go see this place downtown," and that to me was like I was surrounded by so many artists, and I felt like an artist, and that made me feel really good. Now, the display business is kind of antiquated now. It's not gone the way of the dodo bird, but because of the economy of scale, is that stores used to be a lot of mom and pop type of stores back then, where people were willing to take those chances. And then the big chains came along, and the shopping centers, and name brands, and marquee names, etc. And those people, if they owned a number of stores, had to send out the same package to each store. So they ended up printing flat goods and sending those out to stores. And then they started getting away from mannequins and personalized things like that. So I happened to be in the display business during the golden years and the dying years of that craft, as it were. And that's what I did right before Smalespace. In fact, I was walking around downtown London and saw a for rent sign. I was feeling rather flush because I had some good savings from my jobs. And as you heard in a previous episode, I gave my brother Bob a call and said, "Bob, you want to open a coffee house? I don't seem to have enough money because I think it's going to cost more than what I've saved." And we went from there. And that, I know a lot of you have had many interesting career moves both vertically and laterally, and sometimes at acute angles, etc., like me. And I think those become the rich parts of our lives, the variety and the I don't know, the sheer joy. And then you move on, and then you say, well, I can't believe I did that. I don't think my kids know any of this, you know. So it's going to be maybe interesting for them to hear about some of those things I did back when I was pretty darn young, actually. And folks, I'm going to talk to you real soon again. It was a real fun day of remembering some of these things, and I know as soon as I push the stop button, there'll be lots more things that'll come to my mind about the days of display. Bye.